A lot of eyes on what's going on in California when it comes to firearms litigation, but we've got up in Chicago, the ATF setting up an intelligence center to help track down the use of firearms in crimes. Good morning, Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY. Springfield's News and Talk. If you subscribe to the Chicago Sun-Times, you'll see this story about the new ATF boss that is setting up a new intelligence center to solve more gun crimes. Christopher Ammon, he is talking with the Sun-Times about these efforts. He's the Chicago chief for the ATF. And just to go through some of this here, he says that in the last 6 months, they've been setting up this intelligence center. It's the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network and E-Trace programs, all part of a national system, and they're designed to help law enforcement track the history of firearms that are used to commit crimes. The goal, the Sun-Times says, is to trace guns and shell casings from crime scenes, to connect them to others, quickly painting a picture for investigators to connect the dots. The data that they collect is going to help them track down arms that are used in robberies and other serial offenders using firearms. Could also be used in detention hearings to argue whether a defendant is a danger to the community, of course, because now Illinois has the end of cash bail in place. So the Chicago Police Department also heralding this, saying that this type of center is going to be helping them collaborate with the interagency cooperation there, aiming to disrupt what they say is the future violence through an expedited process of identifying armed violent offenders for investigation and prosecution through ballistic evidence. So they've got that set up to where you've have this ongoing effort to go after firearms that are in the wrong hands. We see these stories time and again. We're going to talk about Chicago crime a little bit later on, especially with a new superintendent approved by the Chicago City Council yesterday. But one series of stories was not just about what's happening in Chicago, but what's happening elsewhere in the suburbs. And you had a series of armed robberies that were happening, and the armed robbery reports seem to be very similar, as if it was somebody who was committing the same types of crimes using a rifle and a handgun, and even hitting people with the firearms, not shooting them, but hitting them physically, like in the face, for instance. So obviously there's an effort to continue to go after those who are using firearms in an illegal manner, and the ATF getting that situation put together. Other gun news, as we said, a lot of focus on what's going on in California because of their magazine ban that's currently challenged in courts with a lower court judge, Benitez, on September 22nd, blocking enforcement of California's ban on the possession of magazines over 10 rounds. Well, this week, California filed for a motion to have that order blocking the ban on magazines in California. They want to stay that order. And of course, we've learned all throughout tracking what's going on in Illinois courts, an injunction, what a stay means for an injunction. So they're essentially looking to hold the lower court's ruling for a preliminary injunction at bay so they can still enforce the law. But here's the thing. Benitez, when he issued that ruling September 22nd, He put his own stay on it, saying that this injunction, this preliminary injunction, would only be in effect for 10 days. Or rather, a stay on the injunction would be in effect for 10 days. And if it's not overturned by the appeals court in 10 days, then the injunction kicks in. So you've got California filing to put a stay on that injunction with the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. So that's something else that happened this week. And of course, California, in defending the magazine ban, is saying that a stay is necessary to prevent an influx of long prohibited large capacity magazines into California that threaten public and officer safety. And they seem to be using, the public interest approach of why they feel that the Second Amendment should be curbed in allowing people to have these types of firearms because they say they're dangerous and unusual. These types of magazines allow for, increased firepower. and that puts the public at risk and in danger. So that's the argument the state's using, but obviously the Second Amendment community is looking at decisions from the U.S. Supreme Court as far back as Heller, and even the most recent Bruin decision as to how that's going to impact this case. So a lot of eyes on California, but I hate to tell you, no updates on the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals in the challenge against Illinois' gun and magazine ban. We're still waiting on that. And speaking of, we've got just, 3 days until October 1st opens, and that's the window for Illinois' gun registry to open. Now, it doesn't mean you have to register your firearms starting October 1st. That deadline's January 1st in Illinois, and we'll be delving deeper into those rules tomorrow. So definitely stay tuned, subscribe, hit that notification, or just wake up with us each and every morning here from 6 to 9 with Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk.